this is going to be a fun session. We've got fantastic guests lined up for us. It's also a place for you to chat, put in your thoughts or ideas in the chat. We've got an online, off-screen moderator who can help moderate the chat. So if you have any thoughts or questions, pop them in throughout throughout our chat. Katie can throw us those questions. So I've been an educator, as Ben have introduced me. I don't need to introduce myself again. As Ben said, I'm a research coordinator based in here at ISB. And I've been an educator for 20 years. So over this 20 years, I've experienced my personal paradigm shift as an educator. I remember in my early career as a teacher, I used to hand out photocopied sheets of the letter S and then helping children trace the letter S. And then maybe 15 years ago, my paradigm shift happened where I thought, wow, this new way of thinking where we place children at the center of the learning and consider them and the activities we do and let them lead us to the learning. So I find myself picking up sticks, following children's ideas, and then with the sticks we're drawing circles on the sandpit. But then the learning objective is not as clear as when they were tracing the letter S. It was clear for the parents, it was clear for the teachers, it was clear for the administrators. But when they're doing that with sticks, it just looked like you're playing with sticks. So how do I explain that when the learning objective is not so clear? Well, anyway, for our session today, we're going to step back from the classroom and step back from the schools. We are going to be chatting with an artist, a designer, and a scientist, which makes me think that could be a joke potential there. An artist, a designer, and a scientist walks into a room or a bar, depending where you are. Well, maybe you'll get some ideas for this joke as we have our chat. So our first guest is Rohan. Rohan is a cartoonist and an illustrator from Nagpur, India. He is the creator of Green Humour, a series of cartoons on wildlife and conservation. Green Humour is the first series of comics from India to be distributed internationally by a major syndicate, Universal Press Go Comics, and appears periodically in wildlife magazines and newspapers. He also collaborates with organizations working on wildlife and conservation to produce illustrated awareness material. He has won awards for his work from the UNDP, Century Asia, WWF International, Royal Bank of Scotland, and the Green Literature Festival. He has authored 5 books, including Green Humour for a Green Planet and Naturalist Rudy, published by Penguin. His books have been displayed at COP26 and COP27. Rohan is notorious for rolling up like a ball, and like a pangolin to avoid answering the phone or meeting people. You got to watch out with this one.
I'll try my best not to be a pangolin here.
Yes, you better not. Carol is a lead design futurist in the creative play lab of the Lego Group. Her key focus is designing the way we imagine and design play, empowering adults to explore wider possibilities of innovation playfully, creatively in the futures, hence increasing the odds of meaningful products and services delivered to our generations to come. How cool is that?
All for the kids and play.
Woohoo! And last but not least is Morten, a Danish chemist, but not the one that you find behind your local apothec counter. Morten is a professor of chemistry at the University of Copenhagen here in Denmark. He is best known for the development of the click chemistry. Last year, Morten was awarded the 2022 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Ladies and gentlemen, Morten Peter Meldal.
Thank you very much, Idah.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm so delighted that we can share this space and share your stories with a global audience of educators around the world. So, Rohan, I'm curious to know about your work as a cartoonist. Maybe you can share with our audience, what do you do?
Sure. So, because all of this is about play, I can tell you that cartooning and illustration is all about solving problems visually, and that's what I do for a living. So just a few examples of how play has been involved in my work. There's this publication called Where's Gaju's Herd? It's about a baby elephant that loses track of its herd, and then how it has to navigate several conservation threats that elephants face in India, like deforestation, like habitat loss, highways, railways, and eventually it is united with its mother. So as a child reads and colors this comic plus coloring book, they develop an empathy for this creature. Similarly, there's this book on dolphins in the Mediterranean Sea. It is also a comic book that people can color. And as you read the story, you realize the problems that dolphins are facing in the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, and you develop an empathy for these creatures. Another example of play is this game where you can just, based on your the knowledge of geography of India, you have to play these games where there are birds of India, there are mammals of India, and you have to drag and drop the icons on the map, and if you're right, you score points. There's a card game on the migration of this this bird. Is from Hong Kong. It's called the black-faced spoonbill. It's an endangered bird that comes to Hong Kong every winter from the north, and the card game gives you different kinds of cards. So if you pick a card that favors, the illustration is a favorable scenario for the migration of this bird, then you win a point. And if you pick a card that is a threat to this bird, there are various illustrated scenarios like pollution, like habitat loss, then you lose a point. And that's how you come to know more about what this bird does and what its life is all about. I have done maps like these, the wildlife maps that have been turned into jigsaw puzzles for kids to solve. And I've also done books that make learning about nature very interesting for kids. So that's what my work has been like.
So there's message, deeper message in your work.
I hope so. Yes,
Yeah.
that's always been the motive. Yeah.
Lovely. What about you, Carol? You've got a cool job title, Futurology Manager.
I know.
Yeah. Tell us about yourself.
It's much more fun than it sounds. I'm from Hong Kong, actually. I grew up in a mega city, like West is one of the most crowded places in the world. So I grew up with, of course, Lego toys and lots of other toys. Some stories that I shared with the kids around the world. Some is very specific for my time and my areas. I think when Rohan said like there's a lot of nature in Hong Kong as well, I kind of echo a lot, because if I go home now through a plane, what I see is almost like a forest built by skyscrapers. So it's built on hills, and there's a lot of people, lots of activity and energy in that city. So what I do now in Denmark, in the headquarters of the Lego Group, I design the toys for the next generations to come, which means we always need to think about, what's the next relevant, exciting play for kids? How do we facilitate the learnings better through their playing with Lego? So throughout the years, I know in a lot of Lego history, you see that we're not only like just doing what we do best, we often think about, how do we innovate? How do we make the new things going that is relevant for the kids? So my job basically is to open up that stories, right? Helping grown-ups, colleagues actually to think about what if something happens? What about the futures is no longer what we used to be? What would that means actually to our kids, and how do we design product or service that help them to learn better in those worlds? So I think we worked a lot with kids when we test our toys as well. The funny thing about thinking beyond our time is when you ask the kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What's the futures? They are ignited by imagination. They have lots of different thoughts, very specific thoughts, who they want to be, what they want to play, how the environments go. But you put the grown-ups in the conference room and ask them, like, what would future be like? They'd be like, they would have very difficult times to think about, what's realistic, what's like in their past memories. So for my job, big part of it is all about preparing people mindsets to think about futures, to close those imagination gaps. So we think about, then why don't we design the play experience for grown-ups as we design a play experience also for kids to help us easily to imagine with creativity and also collaborate better through the process. So one example for our work is like there's a chance we have to inspire and inform our leaders of product and marketing in an important meeting. In the business as usual, we will prepare a lot of trends, a lot of like presentations so that they kind of get to know what's up there. But instead we decided to build 4 different playrooms for them to go through. We also invite kids in to play with us together in those rooms to really bring the vivid picture. What is it feels like if you lived in a future, for example, with virtual supermarket? What if there is a strong voice from the kids that they can kind of impact the policies and the product makings about the environment issues? So that is when we start to realize experience as play is actually a great strategy for us grown-up to think about the unimaginable as well. So sometimes, of course, we use a lot of Lego bricks. In every conference room we have in the company, we have Lego bricks so that we can fidget and prototype different ideas. So this is also a lightweight for us to kind of bring play alive in our daily work as well. So that's all about play in Lego.
Wow. You almost like need like a crystal ball to see the future. What will it look like?
Yeah.
What will you plan?
Exactly. But in fact, like we are part of the future, so we all like act upon it. So it's a collaborations after all, and co-creation after all. So no one would have that one true future. It's about where we want to be all together as well.
Yeah. Speaking about the future, we got a scientist in the house.
Exactly.
Morten, would you like to share about your work?
As you introduced, I'm professor at University of Copenhagen, and last year I was so lucky to be awarded a Nobel Prize, and that actually makes a communication channel. You become much more trustworthy when you have a Nobel Prize. So I have actually started to take up some of the thoughts that I've gotten over the years with teaching, where I find that the students very often lack the imaginative ability to see the invisible world of chemistry, and that invisible world is extremely important. It's a 3-dimensional world that we cannot see directly, but we have all the means today to actually illustrate it, even to the youngest children. And I think it would be fantastic to go back to first grade and make chemistry, which is everything, chemistry part of the curriculum from the first grade, just like we do reading and writing. We should know about our world. So that's also the purpose why I'm here today, to actually illustrate with this presentation I have here, how chemistry in a, how chemistry by showing animations can illustrate what is going on. So this is a chemical reaction we see in one corner, and down in the middle we have the molecule which is called an alkyne. It's a big bag of electrons. So chemistry is all about electrons which are negatively charged and nuclei which are positively charged. And these are the electrons. They are like clouds around the positively charged nuclei. And this is what happens. So click chemistry is the reaction that I showed in the corner, and now I illustrate it here by animation. A copper 1 ion is coming in and attaching itself to the electron cloud. So negative meets positive. And then this actually acidifies down here, and we get this complex. This complex is not enough for reactivity, so a second copper atom comes in here, sits on the electrons, and then it peels it off like opening a can of sardines. It peels off the electrons to open up for the positive charge in the center. And then there's something here around which is called an A site, and it comes rolling in from there, and it attaches itself with just the right way of attachment. You can see the colors match and the size match, everything matches to form a new molecule. This one here. that lose one copper atom and a second copper atom. So the copper is just a little catalyst that comes in and do the job and goes away and do a second job. So this is the product. And this animation just shows how you can be made understand what was up in the corner fairly easily by doing animations. And you can also do animations like this. This is now molecules that have properties. One can kill a cell, one can enter a cell, and one can recognize a cell.
I like how you put googly eyes on them.
Because I want to give the molecules a personality. I think that children actually need emotions also when they are playing. So one thing is what they are seeing, and the other thing is their emotion. So now we have made this molecule by animation, and we can now let it interact with a cell. So we have one part that recognizes cell, we have one part that enter the cell, and then it takes the other guys with it. And the last one is the one that affects the cell death. So this is how we can maybe in the future cure cancer.
Wow.
And everything is chemistry.
Of course.
Our chemistry is everything. And therefore, I think it's very important that we communicate this to the children from the very beginning. So we should start very early and very positive with chemistry. No exams or controls. Have you learned this? Have you learned that? Just show them the world. You know, that I think is very important, because we have such problems getting the best people in the society to do the most difficult thing that is to do, that is learning chemistry.
I must say, I wasn't a good student. Chemistry wasn't a subject
Because it was not presented as a game to you.
No, probably that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to get hold of the young and create this interest for natural sciences, which is really a playful world. Actually, science, and my research included, is all about playing with the molecules. It's a Lego. We called it molecular Lego in the 90s. And we built up molecules, and eventually it became click. So Lego with click, it can be closer to gaming, right? So we want to introduce that as a concept. And curiosity is the driver for all learning. If you are not interested and curious about it, you won't learn a thing. You cannot learn, in my opinion, I also tell the students that you cannot learn if you learn to pass exam. So you have to learn in order to be interested. And the more you learn about a subject, the more interesting it gets.
I really wish I can meet you earlier, Morten, when I start to lose my interest in chemistry. There's a big part of experiment in chemistry, which is really exciting for me now. You kind of remind me about that as well.
Yes, I think that we should have, of course, the experiments that they need in order to play with the things, but they also need to have the fundamental visual world, and they need to have some tools to illustrate it manually in their hands, the kids. That would give it a really good push forward with the sciences, and make sciences good instead of being, there's chemistry in the food. Right?
Thank you, Morten. Now, this would not be a Playful School Conference if we don't play. So I thought we could do some playing here. Oh, Morten, did you have some more?
No, it's okay. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I said what I need.
Oh. So, I don't know if you played this when you were in school. Did you play this?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What was it called? I don't know the technical name.
In my school, they used to call it Inky Pinky Ponky. I don't know what.
Ingy Pingy Pongy.
Yes.
Ah, what about in Hong Kong?
Northwest, southeast.
Northwest, southeast. In
Yeah.
Denmark?
I don't remember. We had a saying as well.
I was told in Denmark it was called Nip Napper. Right? Nip Napper. So
Sounds a lot better than Inky Pinky Ponky.
Ingy Pingy Ponky. It's kind of rhymey. So I thought we could play a little.
Let's
Shall-
play.
Yeah? Rohan, what color would you like?
I like yellow.
Yellow. In the audience, you can see that's yellow. YELLOW. What
That's
number
a
would
tiger
you like?
color.
Say 8.
8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What number would you like?
Eight again.
Oh, 8 again. Let's see. What question do you have? What energizes you?
Wow. Okay. So I draw about nature, and that makes my canvas infinite, you know, because there's always new things to learn about nature. There's new things, new discoveries to make through my work, and then pass it on to my audience as comics, as cartoons. So that prospect is itself very energizing to me. And coffee.
Of course, of course. I think there's a Japanese saying, nature bathing or something like that, where you get energy by going for a walk in the forest.
Yes.
Yeah. I have to find an exact word for it.
Let's sneak out of the conference and I'll take you around
Yeah.
for a bird walk here.
Let's go. What about you, Carol? What energizes you?
I think it's the joy that you kind of foster from being together with people. I think we've been quite a tough period of pandemic globally now. We lack that human connections as a togetherness as well. So I miss that a lot, and then I kind of want to seek those energy more and more in the future as well.
What about you, Morten?
Well, there's several things, but particularly nature. So I got all the inspiration originally from being a lot in nature. I was at my grandparents' farm, and I was out from 8 in the morning till 9 in the evening, just playing around with nature and wondering about everything. So that was very good. And then also having a problem to solve. I think, you know, when you're working with a problem, you are waking up at 1 o'clock at night and you start thinking and you can't fall asleep again because maybe it's there, the solution is there, you are working towards it. Next morning you cannot wait to get to the lab to see if it worked, what you put on the day before and so on.
Yeah.
That's really inspiring when you are deciding yourself what is the problem you work on and you play with it.
Yeah. So it's intrinsic motivation that comes from yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm missing that with the students. You know, you shouldn't do things for obligation.
Yeah.
You should do things for, you know, satisfaction of your curiosity.
Yeah. Wonderful. Rohan, do you want to try with Carol?
I'm really bad at this. Why not, Carol? You try and I pick a number. That's the easy part.
Okay. Okay, you can pick a color first, right?
Black.
Black. And the number is?
No, I think you have to roll it
You got to
for
spell.
each letter.
Oh,
BLACK. Yeah.
That's a 4, right?
Okay. 3.
1, 2, 3. It's the 7.
6 again.
Huh?
Okay. Yeah. 7. Yeah.
7.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So you can
Now you
open up and read
open-
number 7
Okay.
The question was
It's
7.
a question for myself.
for all of us.
For all of us.
Okay. When did you last experience choice in your job? Wow.
Choice. Should I take it first?
Yeah, please. Rohan.
So I remember this instance where a book of mine called Natural Study, it's about a detective mongoose who solves various observations he comes across in nature, much like a detective would solve a case.
Yeah.
And in that process, the reader gets familiar with the workings of the natural world. So there's a lot of gory details in that book about how animals kill their prey, how nature is just very ruthless, you know. So the first publisher I pitched the concept to, they wanted me to omit the gory details so that it would be child friendly, but I refused. I think that children as well as young readers are very capable of understanding that nature is ruthless and yet appreciating it. And so I refused. I think I made the right decision or the right choice because later Penguin published the book and it won 2 awards recently. So speaks for itself.
Yes.
Lovely. Yeah, that's also challenging questions, I think, for me, because we encounter choices every single day. Like either it's big choices on what is the next big strategies we need to roll out in the long run, or more short term, like what is the next color that would ignite kids' sensitivity. Then those are different levels of choices. I think one thing you inspired me more than when you talk about picking the problem to solve. I think this is the fundamental choice that lead us every day to spend our energy, effort, and curiosity on those things. Yeah, so
I
that's
very much agree with you on that. So if you run a research group in particular, you not only have to make your own choices, you also have to assist everybody else in the group to make choices, and it's a hard thing for people to make these choices because they can be a choice between should I do that and should I do this. This is more obligation. This is more what I think is right. So how do I navigate in that? And I think that so that's where I actually see a lot of choice every single day.
And when we worked with futures, I think choices also doesn't mean a black or white or yes and no. Like what we're trying very hard to do is also to widen our choices, like make more strategic options so that we can test around them, play around with them to see if there's new ways of doing things as well. So choices means big pool of possibilities as well.
And it becomes extremely important in research because in research things never goes like you want them to. So you have to make choices to get around those corners and to be able to actually freely take that decision. I want to do something completely different. I want to do it in a completely different way that wasn't planned originally, that wasn't funded essentially by the people who fund this kind of thing. So I think that kind of freedom is extremely important in our research environment. And a lot of the controls and so on should be taken out in research, and also with the children, you know, they should play because they want to play in this direction. They should be directed, they should be helped, they should be assisted to get in the right direction with learning processes through playful things, but they should not be controlled every half year from first grade. That's just...
I connected with our roundtable yesterday where we talk about the constraints in education of assessment. So here we are. It's also existing in the higher education world as well. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a small question for you here. I'm somebody who used drawing as a big part of learning.
Yes.
Every time I came across a complex concept, I would convert it into comics to learn myself.
Yes.
So I would like to know from you, what is the most complex concept of chemistry that you have translated into play?
Well, I think that we're doing play every day because we use computer methods, calculations that are immensely complex, but we don't see them as complex because we use them as intuitive instruments to get the molecular structures, how the molecules interact, how they move around, how they are in water and recognize each other, and you get a signal that goes through a membrane and so on. All of that we can actually illustrate like I did here, but with the molecular drawings.
Okay.
And we do that quite a lot. So the three-dimensional world is extremely important, just as important as it is for you in chemistry.
Yeah, I'm realizing now that my poor grades in chemistry were a lot to do with a lack of visualization.
I'd like to add on, like, the point, the moment you start putting eyes on those molecules, it's actually a story for me. Like, it's not just a picture or like illustration. It's telling me something about their personality.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Makes me curious about, like, oh, what would they do?
Yes,
Like,
and that's what I think the children should also, in particular in the first grades, they should get emotional about the atoms and the molecules and how they are interacting and what they can do and what we use them for and so on.
Emotions and everything.
Yeah, I suppose it seemed like you with your cartoon drawing, how you draw emotions with the eyes and
Eyes, bodies. It's a lot of acting. It's I think the first step to learning cartooning is to watch yourself in the mirror and try to recreate those expressions on paper. People think you're a fool, but that's how you learn it.
Okay. Morten, do you want to try the next one?
Yeah. So I'll start with green. And what do you do?
You can say every alphabet and you flip the thing as many times.
Every alphabet?
Yes. Yeah. Green. So you flip it 5 times.
Green, and then I'll take 9 and I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, and then I'll take the green number 13. That's an unlucky number. When did you last experience delight in your job?
Ooh.
Delight. Yesterday, I came across... So exploring nature, again, is a very important part of my job because what I explore, I draw about. So yesterday, while walking through the sculpture park, I noticed that the mute swan, which happens to be Denmark's national bird, it was snowing and I was complaining about walking in the snow to myself. And there's this pair of mute swans that is building a nest out in the snow. So
Wow.
that was my sense of delight at just coming across that site.
Yeah, I think of like one very vivid moment recently, like you know how in the workplace we now all sit down together and like in front of a big screen and we try to do this. Like the more you do this, your facial expression got stiff and you look very unhappy. One of my colleagues just walked by and said, "Do you want to play? Come on, we're working in the best toy company in the world." It's like, and from that phase, suddenly look up, it's like, what? And that moment I realized that, oh yes, like we try to find our purpose every day. Like we shouldn't be confined by like all the big screen or like things that we need to kind of interact with. Should be more presence at the moment with the people around us as well. So that's very delightful for me.
Oh, lovely. What about you, Morten?
Oh, yesterday I got the most amazing email from one of my master students. The experiment with Alzheimer worked. Whoa!
Wow.
So that's you know,
Congratulations.
yes.
Wow.
So very good. Very important research.
Yeah. Now that we've walked through memory lane, if you at home would like to play this with your family or friends or colleagues at work, you can download it on a conference website. I feel like a YouTuber now, like click on the link to download. Well, YouTuber, who would have thought it's a job now? Like when I was in school, I didn't think it would be a job. And here I am in 2022. YouTuber is what children in my class
That's
are thinking,
true.
yeah, when I grow up, I want to be a YouTuber. But, you know, we are
and
actually...
the scary thing is we don't know what's next.
Exactly.
There might be new jobs that we couldn't picture. Maybe in chemistry as well. There
I
would
don't
be
even know what a
new-
YouTuber really means.
Yeah, so we're teachers in education. We are kind of preparing children for a world that we don't know. Seem like you creating toys or experiences for the future. And, you know, with your work in creating awareness of the planet, of the future, what it could look like and what it would look like. It's so promising and scary at the same time. Maybe we'll take a look at our time growing up. Morten, in the 60s, when you were growing up in Denmark, what was it like in school?
Well, I guarantee you it was much more free than it is today. We still got punishments and so on in the school when I was young. You know, we were detentions. I probably was one of the ones with most detentions in the school at the time.
You did? You had lots of
because
detention?
I loved my freedom. I loved
Yeah.
to do whatever I liked, and I didn't like to do math at the time. And we had a very serious math teacher, so that wasn't a good combination. And I was always out building things, you know, caves and swings and all sorts of things. We even made fireworks and stuff like that when I was a child. So.
Whoa.
Yes. And that was much more fun than sitting still on a school bench. The most fun I had in my physics class, I had a very good physics teacher. And that was actually the only thing I really liked in school. And then I liked to make creative things at home, like when we had what's called stil, dance stil. What is that called in English? I don't know.
Dance stil.
Stainless steel.
You know, you had to write an essay.
Yeah?
I loved that because then I could start fantasizing about whatever I was writing about. But learning is not easy if you want to have a pleasure out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about you, Carol? What was it like in Hong Kong?
Complete opposite, I think.
Complete
with
opposite of Morten's.
Exactly. I think a lot of my time spent at school, like very traditional, typical school where you have rules, you have exams, you have tests. That's why I don't grow as much interest in chemistry as you did. But what I enjoy most, of course, is the out of school time or kind of recess time where you can really play with other kids. You can really kind of discuss things that is beyond what has been taught. I think that's very precious for me. And also, family plays a big role, I think, in my grown up as well, because if I'm not at school, then I will be at home playing. But you know, Hong Kong flats or living condition is like very small and tiny in comparison, of course, to Denmark as well. So what we would do is we usually have a communal playground in the middle of lots of like complex of housing. And then all kids around will be there, and then you negotiate, you kind of find your way into the playground, you try different things, and someone will show and teach you new tricks, and then you learn, and then you teach other kids. So that's, for me, it's the kind of true learning moment that I still remember. Yeah.
What about you, Rohan? What is it like in India?
Well, school education tends to be followed by a template, you know, in India, even today, and I think that's a bad thing. So for me, the most interesting subject to learn was history, because I was one of those weird kids, because history always came with a story, and everything that came with a story to me was the easiest thing to learn. So history, languages, those were my favorite things to learn. And you know, there's a lot of regulation in India about parents trying to regulate about what their kids are reading and how they are reading it. And I don't think that should happen, because I can give you my example. I, as a school child, used to go to the library only to read about weapons and warfare. And yet I didn't grow up into a dictator of any kind. So, so I think that regulation should not be there. I think kids should be free to choose about what they want to read and figure out their own lives. So that is one takeaway I've had from my childhood.
Yeah, I think that randomness is quite important. Like when I try to recall my childhood moment in the library, because it's a tiny library, it's like everyone is tiny in Hong Kong. So we have a tiny library, and then what I do is, like, of course, I pick my favorite, and then at some point you get bored out of this, then you start to take random books. And this is when you try to kind of be exposed to something that is not expected. I think that surprise element is quite crucial also in building my creativity or curiosity, actually, to things that I haven't known yet.
I'm going to turn over to Katie. Katie, have you got something for us from the audience?
Yes, Idah, thank you. We have a question that might be relevant to many in the audience, and it goes: as a teacher, I love learning through play, but I found it's not easy to design play for every activity. Which kind of educational activity cannot be through play? Is there any guidance or method to design playful activity for every topic?
Ooh. Morten looks like he's got an idea.
I'm definitely not qualified to answer that.
I think every topic can be taught more or less playfully. So maths can be illustrated, for example, with practical things. You don't necessarily have to learn about position, acceleration, and all of that, you know, integration and differentiation. From pure mathematical point of view, you can also illustrate this with actual things that you are integrating or differentiating, or you're showing emotion, or you're looking at the visualization of electrical fields, or whatever it is that you are learning in physics or math. You can do that more or less visually and with examples. And I also think that if you have then the kids actually doing some measurements or experiments that show them that this is correct, then that actually sticks much better to their brains.
But I suppose there are basic fundamental skills, like maybe knowing the times tables. While you can learn it playfully, you still need to know it so that you can access higher learning. And there are basic reading and writing skills that you need as well, so that you can access the curriculum. So the approach is the key here, that anything we learn, we can approach it playfully.
So you have to pick into the way that the child is functioning in the brain.
Yes.
And if you don't do that, then they don't learn.
Yeah.
And I want to advocate for, like, a more lightweight approach to play in learning as well. Like when we think about play design, it's almost like, oh, we need a system or structures or even kind of big framework built upon that at school environment. But we've run a survey a few years ago internally in the LEGO group and asked around, like, what's your most memorable childhood moment in your life for many grown-ups? And the result is quite surprisingly, a lot of them is not coming back with like really playful setup or a particular game or activity. A lot of them is like doing chores with my mom, like baking cookies, like with my granny. Like these are daily small activities turned playful because you have a guidance. So I think a lot of the children, when they talk to us and tell us like what makes them ticked and what makes them feel playful in an engagement, is that attention that you give to a kid when you all become a player in the experience. So that is, I think, one small thing. I think every educators to think about, like, let's look beyond the big structures and also messiness, as we talked about yesterday. Like, let's think about how to we make every single steps also be very playful for the kids as well.
And then like the relationship is like the emotions. We talk about how powerful it is in learning.
And since we mentioned mathematics, I want to say this, that I am somebody who dreads math. I get nightmares about math.
Same.
But still, I have had a newfound respect for mathematics after discovering that it applies to my work. As a cartoonist, I have to divide my frame into 9 grids to place everything correctly. So if this kind of awareness is made to a child who dreads mathematics, that it could apply to what he or she is interested in, I think that will go a long way to, gathering a sense of respect for that particular subject.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes mathematical thinking is confused with arithmetic skills.
Right.
That's where the tensions of being I'm good in math, so I'm not good in maths is confused, I think. Yeah. Is there another question for us, Katie?
Yes. Okay, that's a big one.
Oh no.
Between the panel, you could design the greatest education worldwide. How do we get around the governments that stop this?
Oh.
I come from India. I need to be careful about what kind of answers will stop me from flying back to my country.
Yeah, so maybe I'm from Denmark, so maybe not so dangerous. And I think that if we do this right, we can get the attention of the government by simply talking to the ones that are actually decision making. At the moment, there's our research and education minister is very open to discussions about this, and I think that's the way to approach it. Not to be afraid of the big animal, but actually to include the big animal in this discussion.
Yeah, and like in a lot of our research works also reflect like future is also uncertain for a lot of nations and like long-term planners as well. In that sense, I'm expecting more collaborations actually between different governments and between different organizations, because to get a new waves of education through, we need a lot of different knowledge and a lot of different ways of thinking, different world wills as well. So in that sense, I think it's the hope that which gather all together, right? We want to have the next generations of human more integrate better to the planet, integrate better to our environment and our society. So with that goal, I think there could be a lot of new projects or new innovations coming up from the educational view as well.
Yeah, making it meaningful, not just for everyone and for the future.
And if works in one part of the world, there might be a way to also scale it to different part of the world as well. We are very connected in that sense.
Yeah.
I'd say that a lot of debate is necessary on whatever platforms allow productive and inclusive debate. So, for example, in India, there is always a lot of back and forth about how much religion to include in education, how much science to include in education. I think I'm not a religious person, but I feel that for a country like India, they should go hand in hand, and there should be the right kind of balance. So, for example, of late, there has been a lot of rewriting of history in our courses, a lot of rewriting of science from a very religious perspective. And I think various parties need to be included in a productive debate about how
the
much is the
curriculum
right balance.
Yeah.
Also, I think that there's a problem with the teachers' education is always like 5 years behind the current day,
Yes.
or 10 maybe even, and this is actually a problem in the schools in a global world that is progressing that fast with new challenges happening every day. We see the television is full of catastrophes that are caused by climate changes, and of course the teachers want to educate the children to take care of that problem, but it can be hard because it wasn't there when they were educated. And how do we then do that? So that's an example, but in many ways we have a problem with getting the teachers on board as well as the politicians and the decision makers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially from our part of the world, I think a lot of the government's prejudice tends to reflect on the education system. And I think it's also the onus of citizens to vote responsibly to help design a better education module.
Yeah. Did you want to add something?
No, I just can't agree more with Rohan. Like, a lot of grown-ups actually, even in a professional workplace today, need to skill up quickly with the changing world as well. So we actually want to learn from kids, like how do they have such a fast-paced learning curve and still being curious and kind of very willing to absorb new knowledge as they grow up as well. So if it's not too late to learn, then it's not too late to play for adults as well.
Yeah. Oh, it gives us hope then for our future. Any last questions from you, Katie?
Yes. What game do you wish existed to teach children now? Something that would improve social relations? Something that would solve climate?
Oh, what games?
I say to start with read more comics.
Read more comics.
They make better people out of you.
I think that games, we have a fantastic gaming industry in this world, and we could make games that really could inspire the young to enter into social relationships, into knowing what chemistry and math is all about, and so on. If we really put the professional game developers to do this kind of task instead of optimizing profits by reward games, what the young people actually do now, a lot of reward games where you shoot somebody and that's your win, and I don't think that's the best way of using this fantastic technology.
Yeah. It's difficult to pick one. Like, I think different types of games also help kids in different ways as well. If it's about environmental kind of development, I tend to lean towards an old game called Civilization, where you kind of simulate how a civilization will grow from very primitive village to atomic cities powered by tech. So you will see how you kind of interact with other civilizations as well. So I think a lot of simulation play, kind of more free play, would encourage kids to understand and explore how their relationship and how they position themselves in this world.
Problem-solving games.
Yeah. All right. So we've come towards the end of our session here. It's been really wonderful. Thank you for sharing all your stories.
Thank you.
One last word. If you could add something in our education today, what would you do? What would you add?
My school principal encouraged us to write love letters to our partners. She was very radical.
Yeah.
And I don't think people do that anymore. So I would encourage
Writing
kids
letters.
to, no, love letters
Love
specifically.
letters. Oh,
They're the
love
real
letters.
test of language. If you can coach somebody through language, that's the best way to learn it.
Language of love. What about you?
I would like kids teacher. Like I think kids teach me so many different knowledge nowadays. I think that maybe it's great to actually hand over also the stage to them to let them learn by teaching us as well.
Lovely. And what about you, Morten?
I would like chemistry with emotions from first grade.
Oh yes, with those eyes, and maybe Rohan can
Yes.
help you animate them.
Yes.
Well, that's all the time we have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed our chat at the round table. Morten, Carol, Rohan, thank you so